Let's go to the White House right now.
Let's
go to the Office of Management and Budget Director Peter Orszag, who's gearing up for today's Fiscal Responsibility Summit. And Peter, I know that growing up you probably always wanted to work at the White House, but I would guess right now you may be wishing that you had just decided to play baseball instead, because you've got economic meteors falling down on you by the day. Let's start with the tax increases. First of all, very quickly, just so everybody knows out there, Barack Obama made this promise during the campaign. He was going to allow the Bush tax cuts to expire, rates to go up. But at the same time, even he expressed concern if you do that during an economic downturn, it might increase the downturn. Why the change of direction, at least from his modified campaign promise?
Well, I don't think there is any change at all. I think you'll see those tax provisions expiring after the economy should be recovering. It's not going to happen this year.
And explain that. That's an important point. Explain these don't really take effect for a couple of years, right?
Yeah, those tax provisions for high-income taxpayers above $250,000 a year are scheduled to expire at the end of 2010. Under the president's budget, they would be allowed to expire again only for those who are earning more than $250,000 a year.
So President Obama would have the option. Let's say halfway through 2010, unemployment's at 12 or 13%, GDP continues to fall, and let's hope to God that's not the case. But you all still reserve the right at that point to revisit tax increases, right?
Sure, one can always, we're going to have to, see how everything goes, but we're trying to avoid that situation in the first place. That was the whole point of the Recovery Act, to try to jumpstart the economy and avoid those double-digit unemployment rates.
How important is it for you to decrease the deficit, to decrease the national debt over time? Do you consider that one of your most important jobs?
Absolutely, and the reason is if we don't do that, at some point we're going to face a budget crisis, and that would be just as challenging as what we're facing today. So we need to act in order to avoid creating a big problem in the future, and the key to that is getting health care under control. Health care costs are the primary driver of our long-term fiscal gap.
And Peter, one of the things that has encouraged me about the president's economic message has been the fact that he understands, and he has said as much publicly, that it is our entitlement programs that cause the greatest challenge. You talk about getting health care costs under control. Well, it's Medicare that actually causes a greater threat over the next 20 to 30 years than Social Security. Will the president push Nancy Pelosi into reform? He's tried before and she pushed back. Will he continue leaning in and say we must reform these entitlement programs?
Well, you've got it exactly right. Medicare and Medicaid are the key drivers of our overall long-term fiscal gap over the long term. The president wants to get health reform done this year, and let me be very clear, health care reform is entitlement reform.
All right, Peter Orszag,
Mika.
it's Mika here in New York. This is an administration, Catty K, that is clearly trying to do, whether you agree with it or not philosophically, a lot of opposing things. Massive spending, deficit reduction, and then all the different challenges that happen in between. You have a question.
Yeah, Peter, it's Catty K here in New York. I wonder who's going to hold mayors and governors responsible for how this money is being spent, the speed with which it's being spent, and particularly this issue which seems to me rather fuzzy of saving and creating jobs. How are we going to know whether these are jobs that are actually created or whether they're jobs that would have been laid off that are not going to be laid off? Who is it in the White House that's going to have that job of putting the mayors and the governors' feet to the fire and saying, listen, we want to know that this money is really being spent appropriately, responsibly, and with the time that in the time frame that we need it spent?
You're going to see some announcements this week from the White House on the point people for that effort. I spoke to the governors yesterday at the National Governors Association meeting about their role in getting money out the door, not only well but wisely. And again, in terms of sort of who's in the responsible federal officials, you're going to see some personnel announcements on that this week.
Okay, John Heilman.
Hey, Peter, it's John Heilman from New York Magazine. There's a report in the New York Times today, this goes back to a question that Joe kind of hinted at a minute ago, which is that Barack Obama considered doing a White House task force on Social Security reform to announce today, and he got pushback from Democratic leaders in the House and Senate. Is that report true? And is the question of Social Security reform still on the table for you guys? How important is it?
Well, I want to come back to the point that was raised earlier, which is that Medicare and Medicaid are the primary drivers of our long-term fiscal problem. We want to address that first. We want to get health care done this year. Social Security is also an issue, and after we've dealt with health care, I think it probably does make sense to try to get Social Security on sounder ground also, but let's get the big problem fixed first.
But Peter, did you guys back down or not?
I don't think it's constructive to get into this sort of back and forth of discussions in internal discussions. I think the important point is the President's committed to addressing the largest problem that we face, which is Medicare and Medicaid.
Peter, please understand it may not be constructive, but it's an awful lot of fun. Did Nancy Pelosi tell you to back off of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid entitlement reform?
You guys are wild having fun like that. Look, we want to get, I really want to focus on.
It's all we got.
He fits the show. Answer the question, Peter. You got an answer for us?
Again, Social Security is, does face a long-term actuarial deficit. It does need to be addressed, but it's much smaller than the problems in Medicare and Medicaid and the overall health system. I think it makes sense to focus there first.
All right.
All right. Hey, Peter, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate it. By the way, we're coming to the White House tomorrow, and we're going to bring our math equations there. We have a heck of a good time with playing with those and actuarial tables. If you want to come out and play with us,
I have a calculator that I could let you borrow if you'd like.
Yes, and good luck.
That'd be great.
Good luck with the Fiscal Responsibility Summit.
Thank you.
There's a lot going on there. Peter Orszag, live from the White House.
Good luck, Peter.
Thanks very much. What's coming up, Joe?
We got Chuck Todd also. We have former White House Chief of Staff